Latin Nexus Business Networking Group is a community-driven movement that is dedicated to connecting entrepreneurs, leaders, and visionaries from all walks of life in order to build a better and stronger community for all of us to live, work, and create a future for our families.
Hello, 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 and good afternoon, everyone. It is Jeannie here with the Latin Nexus, all about her business on the PA Empowerment Network. I hope that you survived this crucial weather that we just had, at least here in Pennsylvania. I hope you're nice and warm because we're back, we keep going. And today's topic is something that goes on in many families' whispers and their conversations. And it's about getting down to the real truth about reverse mortgage. So a lot of people don't know what that is, right? And where they're at right now so that they can get this information is right here, right? This is a powerful tool for retirement stability, generating for plans, right? Today, I have an expert on here, right? His name is Anthony Burns, and he is someone that specializes in this. This was new to me when I met him. He gave me some information, and that's why I'm bringing him here today to you, because guess what? I didn't have a clue of what I was thinking that it was, and he made that clear for me. And now he's here to make that clear for you as well. So please help me in welcoming Anthony Burns.
Jeannie.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for being here today.
I'm great. Thank you. How are you doing?
Good, good. How is the weather treating you so far?
Terribly. It's freezing.
You and everyone else. But like I mentioned, Anthony, you have your line of business is something that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. I definitely was not aware of it. When I met you, I kind of heard it, you hear it like in the wind, like passing through, but you never really stopped to think of what is it really and when am I going to need it and how can I go about getting it, right? So these are questions that a lot of people have. I actually loved our conversation. So for those of you that don't know, I went back, how I like to do my coffee meetings. And I actually had a coffee meetup with Anthony, and he gave me so much information. He even gave me a book, brought it home, gave as much information as I possibly could to my husband, and he loved it, so we're not at that retirement age, but now we know how we can plan for taking those steps in the future. And the way that you explained it to me was clear enough that I was able to explain it to my husband, right? And that's why you're here today. So for our listeners that are on today, or maybe they'll be watching on the repeat, what is reverse mortgage? In the clearest way, like for someone that had no clue like me.
I'm going to springboard off a word that you just used, which is plan. Mm-hmm. It's probably one of the most powerful and misunderstood financial planning tools that exists. And there's probably, we could get into the weeds on some of the reasons why I think that's the case. And I'm happy to travel that path with you if you like. But what is a reverse mortgage? I'll start off by saying I'm going to speak mostly about the FHA reverse mortgage. It's also called a HECM, which stands for Home Equity Conversion Mortgage. And the reason that I'm going to speak primarily on that is where most reverse clients are going to go. Over 90% of all reverse mortgages are written as that FHA HECM program. So what is the FHA version of a reverse mortgage? It is fundamentally a line of credit designed for retirees, but it's a line of credit that's on steroids and designed really so that the retiree can benefit from some of these unique features. And then what then are those unique features? Well, first and foremost, and this is the one that people are probably most aware of, monthly payments are optional. And when I say they're most aware of them, there's a little bit of misunderstanding there too. A lot of people think you can't make a mortgage payment with a reverse mortgage. But in fact, you can. They're 100% optional. And if you think about it, people traditionally over the course of their life, they get a mortgage and it's a 30-year, it's a 15, it's interest only. A lot of people will opt for an interest only loan because it provides more flexibility on a monthly basis. And that's all that this aims to do, is provide added flexibility in retirement. So that's unique feature number one, optional monthly payments. Unique feature number two is that there's no time clock. So this isn't like your traditional home equity line of credit where you're going to draw for 10 years and make interest only payments. And then you're going to switch to 20-year payments of a repayment of the entire balance. There's no time clock here at all. So you're age eligible for this program at 62. If you live to be 122, that program is still there for you. Available credit, if you still have available credit, is available to you for that whole period of time. Unique feature number 3 is that it's non-recourse, which is to say, you can imagine a scenario where if you chose not to make a payment for 60 years, let's say, and you took it out at age 62 and had it until you were age 122, and maybe the real estate market took a massive tumble, those two situations combined could result in a situation where, at least on paper, you have a loan balance that exceeds the value of your property, which is a fear that a lot of people have with this program. Well, statistically, and we can get into this, that's unlikely to happen. However, if it were to happen, neither the homeowners nor their heirs would be on the hook. And that's what we mean by non-recourse. By non-recourse, we mean you can't possibly owe at settlement more than the value of the home. Another way of saying that is that the value of the home will always serve as sufficient collateral for that loan, no matter what. So we're not ever leaving a bill to the homeowners or the heirs. And then the 4th unique feature, and then this takes the program from what most people perceive to be a last resort option and makes it a planning tool, is that there is a growing line of credit feature. So if you have available credit this month, you will have more available credit next month and the month after that. And what that does is it creates this compounding effect where somebody who opens a $100,000 line of credit today could potentially have a $200,000 line of credit 10 years from now, a $400,000 line of credit 20 years from now, and on and on. And as long as they're in that house and have that loan open, that line of credit will remain available and growing for them. So that's the 4. Those are the 4 unique features that make a reverse mortgage special.
Wow, that's a lot of information. So I'm going to try to backtrack a little bit. So you said that there's no debt for the children, right? So correct. What happens once the person, like, they live to 90, let's say 95? What happens then to the home and the loan?
When they pass away, you mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when they pass away, the title of the home goes from their name to their heir's name, and then their heirs will decide how to disposition the property. So in many cases, they're deciding to just sell the home and pay off the loan and then keep the remaining equity. However, they could choose to stay in the home, and if they want to do that, all they would have to do is refinance into a traditional loan, or if they're age eligible, they may be able to refinance into another reverse mortgage, and then they can still, again, keep the equity.
Okay. And what are the responsibilities that then, like, whether, okay, if they didn't pass away, right? The homeowners, what are the responsibilities? Are they still doing like the taxes and insurances, or are there maintenance fees for that as well? Because if they're not paying the loan, what are the additional fees that they might be paying?
Now, that's a good question, because when you tell people that payments are optional, they will sometimes intuit that taxes and insurance are also optional. And of course, they cannot be. So the requirements on a reverse loan are exactly the same as the requirements of any traditional loan, which is you have to make sure that you're keeping up with tax payments, insurance payments, and maintaining the property such that the local zoning officer isn't chasing you down. We can't have liens and assessments and things like that on the property for poor maintenance. And of course, with a traditional loan, all of those same things are true, but you have the added burden of that required monthly payment.
Okay. And I know a lot of people, like, I try to mention it to a few people, you know how it's bad, what is called like the old Chinese whispers, right? That news keeps going, and then by the time it gets to the person, it's all a mess. So I tried to explain it to a few people that I think that they should look into this, and they brought up a million fears, right? A million scary stories that they have heard. What would you say, like, what would be some how can I say, some advice that you can give for as comfort that we can share? I know a lot of viewers are going to be seeing this as well. Maybe they want to share this information with their parent or a loved one or a neighbor as well. What are some, maybe, because it's a whole other lingo, right? So what are some words that we can use that can bring some calmness, like still that water of fear? Because a lot of people just hear loans and they're like, well, I'm older, I don't want to get into that.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So there are so many things. I mean, first of all, the loan was written into Congress in 1988, started in 1989. It was brought about by HUD. It's insured by FHA. It's overseen and regulated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So when you just look at the entities involved, there are a ton of consumer protections involved. The government is not conspiring to take anybody's home from them. One of the biggest myths that we hear about all the time is, and this is a question that I field no less than 10, 12 times a week. So the bank will own my home, right? So the bank gets the title. The bank is on. That is not the case. The homeowner always keeps title in their name or in the name of a trust that they choose, but they retain ownership and control of the property for the entire time that they're in the property. So that, I think, alone helps to allay a lot of concerns that people have. But I have some thoughts on why people get nervous about the idea of a reverse mortgage. And I think what it comes down to is the idea of debt. So everybody wants to own their home free and clear. Everybody wants to pay off all their credit cards, because in a world that doesn't teach us too much about how finance really works, they teach us very watered down rules. And a nice watered down rule is debt is bad. But debt is kind of like fire, right? It can be very destructive. You could use it to let's go back to fire for a second. Fire is very destructive. We can use fire to burn down a house, or we can use fire to cook a delicious ribeye. How you use fire is everything, and whether or not it's constructive or destructive. Debt is very much the same way. Most people could never have afforded to buy their home in the first place if it weren't for some level of debt. And so when people think of this idea of their mortgage balance potentially increasing, that's very scary to them. But that's because they're looking at the mortgage in isolation. And when you look at anything in isolation and don't take the context into view, it makes it difficult to digest how it works in total. And so I think it's an examination of that debt and how it plays with other assets and how everything works together to make sense. And maybe the easiest way of saying it is, if you chose not to make a $1,500 mortgage payment today, but you put $1,500 into your savings account, isn't that the same? You added $1,500 in debt, but you added $1,500 in your assets. Your balance sheet doesn't necessarily care. So there's a lot of confusion circulating the idea of debt and its use.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Well put. I'm still going to send anybody I talk to you, because it's a lot of information to unpack. Let me ask you really quickly, because we hear everyone does mortgages, or people are in financing and different things. And like I mentioned earlier, reverse mortgage was something that maybe I heard in the past, but I've never met someone that actually did reverse mortgage till you. If you're one of my friends out there and you're hearing, and maybe you do that, I'm sorry if maybe I didn't pay attention at that time, but you are really the first person that I sat down and was doing reverse mortgage. And the way that you explained it to me was very passionate. So I want to unfold that a little bit. How did you come across reverse mortgage out of all the other businesses why reverse mortgage? How did you stumble upon that? And like I said, I know if you're looking for someone that is going to give you the right information and is passionate about what they do, Anthony Burns is the person for you. So I just want to unpack of who you are, and so that people can know you, and they're going to see here, they're going to build the trust with you from here, right? Who are you? How did you stumble upon this, and why?
So I guess we'll go back a little bit. I started in the mortgage business in 1996. I was 22 years old. And I worked in the mortgage business, traditional mortgages, for 26 years, I want to say. And quite honestly, what I knew about reverse mortgages over that period of time was was embarrassing. It was very, very, very little. And then I got out of the mortgage business entirely, I thought, for good. But my mother-in-law called me, and she was having some questions and concerns about her own finances, and she was in need of a solution, but had no idea that a solution existed, what it was called or what it looked like, how it worked, anything like that. So long story short, what we did is we took my mother-in-law's situation, which was living in a house that was in disrepair, depleted savings account, and a budget that didn't work each month. We got her out of the home she was living in New Jersey, got her into brand new construction down in Florida by taking some of the money that she netted from the sale of the home in New Jersey. She put that down on the purchase of a new home in Florida. She got rid of her monthly mortgage payment. She still has a mortgage, but it's a reverse mortgage, so her payments are optional, which corrected her budget issue. So now her budget works again each month. She wasn't required to put all of the money down. So she was able to take $75,000 of the net proceeds from her sale and add it to her bank account and have a real emergency fund again. And her house, that was in disrepair is gone. And now she's got new construction. So it just completely did a 180 for her financially, and helping her through that. I learned so much about how reverse finance works. I started to understand why people don't pay attention to it, what some of how the details play out and what the benefits are, and really how it works as part of a financial plan and not just the last resort. Now, in her case, it was teetering on that last resort. But when I started digging in and seeing what some of the financial planning implications were, that was when I decided to get in with both feet and really just go full steam ahead on it.
No, that's wonderful. What would you say is an ideal client? Like if someone is out there looking for clients for you, once this video goes out, we're going to share it. So I'm sure someone is going to watch the video and say, you know what, I think this person needs it. What are the ideal clients? What is it that people should be listening out for in order for them to connect them with you as a referral?
That's a great question. And I think this is another source of confusion for people is reverse financing does so many different things for so many different people that it's hard to say here is the perfect client. But I can give you a few examples. First and foremost, we have to be of retirement age. So for the FHA program, it's 62. For some of the other proprietary loans, they go down to 55 in most states. And then you have to have significant equity because there is an option to not make payments and those interest charges could accrue. We need to have a good cushion of equity for those charges to accrue into to make the bank comfortable lending the money and make people comfortable with the idea that there's going to be equity remaining for a good bit of time in the future. And so when you start looking at all of those different options or those parameters, now you can start to build what does a good client look like? Well, maybe a good client owes $125,000 on a $400,000 home. They're in their mid-60s. They're working. They have 10, 12 years left on the mortgage. And working until their mid-70s is untenable. And so they need some relief. They need to be able to sit back and actually enjoy retirement without those financial constraints. So one ideal client, this is one that we see very often, is somebody who wants to replace a mortgage with a required payment with a reverse mortgage that has an optional payment. It just frees up cash flow. It allows people to retire sooner, and it allows them to rest on the equity that they worked so hard to get. That, I think, is probably one of the most important. And then you can start veering into other situations, which is I own my home free and clear, but I can't make my budget work every month. And so we can set up funding options that send payments to the clients each month to help them bridge a gap, to help them add liquidity to their life. Because all we're really doing is taking an illiquid asset, which is your equity, and turning it into liquid spendable cash so that people can be more comfortable in their retirement.
Okay. What are the costs? Like if someone goes into planning to go into a reverse mortgage, is there a cost to that? What is the structure? What are the steps that they have to take in order to start the process for that? Also, I wanted to ask, if someone purchased a home and they're older already when they purchased the home, is there a specific amount of time that they have to own the home before they can, sometimes a lot of our elderly make decisions when they're just old, right? And then you want to save them. Is there a way that they can be saved pretty much? Like, is my question, because I know some people, they purchase a home, they're a lot older, and it's just because they wanted to live the American dream. And for them, they felt that was it. I wish that they would have spoken to us a little bit earlier. But they're already in there. So is there a time that they have to hold on to that home, or I know I asked you like 2 questions in one.
I think there may have been 3, Jeannie.
Okay.
There may have been 3. But so I'm gonna answer them in order. So costs. All the traditional costs that you have with every other mortgage, you can expect to pay on a reverse mortgage. So that's all pretty standard fare for people. However, when you start looking at all of those options that make the FHA reverse mortgage really unique, you realize that if you were to go to a bank today and say, hey, I want you to give me a loan, and I may have it for 60 years, and I don't want to make any payments, and if at some point I owe more than the value of the home, I don't want to owe you that money either, and I'd like access to a line of credit, but I need that line of credit to grow at a guaranteed rate for the entire time that I have the loan, the bank would think that you were nuts. Understandably so, and they would turn you around and show you the door. That it just couldn't exist. And so what makes all of those features something that the bank can lend on is a mortgage insurance. And the mortgage insurance, it's provided by FHA, so it's not like a private or anything like that, but it's a government insurance, an FHA mortgage insurance premium that you pay up front. It's equal to 2% of the value of the house, and then it's capped at a certain amount. You'll oftentimes hear people say, oh, well, reverse mortgages are very expensive. To which I'll sometimes ask this question, compared to what? When you're looking at turning your asset that's illiquid into something that is liquid, you have to start looking at those options. And for what it's worth, I go through all of those options with my clients. I don't want to go down the road with them and then have them figure out later on there was a better way for them to access equity. So what are those options? You can sell the house, and sometimes that's the right thing to do. And I've advised clients to do just that. But selling the house is oftentimes a 6% commission. Then there's transfer taxes depending on your state, and then there are moving expenses, and then you also have to go find suitable shelter again with what remains. So that's an expensive proposition. Another option is accessing funds through a traditional mortgage. And of course, you can do that. And I've also advised clients on occasion to do that. In order to do that, however, you have to qualify for the loan, which becomes more cumbersome in retirement, right? Sometimes we're on just Social Security and maybe a small pension. Qualifying becomes cumbersome. And also, if you're working with somebody whose budget is already strained, yes, a new mortgage could add water to the bucket, but that required payment is a hole in the bottom that helps you drain it out. So, that's kind of costs. Now, process is, again, very similar to a traditional loan. There's just one added step, and that added step is that you have to do counseling prior to completing the loan. And counseling is a great thing. It's a huge consumer protection, probably one of the biggest that exists. Every reverse mortgage is going to require that you sit through a counseling session without me, but with a HUD-approved independent counselor. They have no dog in the fight. They don't care if you get the loan, if you don't get the loan. The only thing they care about is that you are well informed as a consumer, that you understand what the process looks like, that you understand, again, what those alternatives look like. Should you sell? Should you get a traditional loan? So they'll go through those with you. But aside from that, the process is very, very similar. And then you're going to have to remind me, Jeannie, what the last question was. Oh, purchasing a home. The timeline on, right? Okay.
A lot older, yeah.
No, there's not really any kind of timeline. I mean, people will purchase a home in cash just for the purpose of, let's say, negotiations, right? They don't want to gum up the works with getting a mortgage involved. So they buy a home in cash. It helps them to negotiate a better deal, perhaps, and then they can come right back to us. And if they do so within 90 days, there's a delayed financing rule, so they could still benefit from some of the tax advantages. associated with using a mortgage to purchase a property. But no, there's no real timeline there. If they take a traditional loan, they may have to have that for a year prior to refinancing into a reverse.
Okay. And you did mention about sitting down with a counselor just to make sure that they're making the right decisions.
Yes.
So how is it that you work and you collaborate? Because, I'm a financial coach, so I do financial needs analysis for a lot of my clients. And then that's how I'm able to see where they're at. The way I explain it to my clients is like, you go to your doctor yearly checkup, right? So you get a financial review. And that's pretty much what I do. It's a financial review. And obviously I don't fit into each section like auto and home insurance, but it's a whole picture of their finance. How do you work alongside CPAs, attorneys, or anything they have? Because I do feel that they should have everything where they can see it all together at once, right? Because if not, people say, well, I think I have something over there, or I think I have something over there. So it's just trying to keep everything a little, even though you're not working in the same businesses, but somehow keep it where everybody's communicating on the behalf of the client. So how do you collaborate with all these people? How is it that what is your system? How do you strategically maneuver that?
In a word, well, I coordinate well.
I know. I knew that was going to be yes.
Well, you know what? So with a business partner of mine, he and I together do continuing education for financial advisors, CPAs, real estate agents, even attorneys in some states. And we love working with accountants and financial planners and realtors and collaborating with them to bring solutions to people. Because oftentimes, to your point, you're stepping into different realms, right? There are tax implications and potentially massive tax benefits that exist with reverse financing, but you have to know how to use them, how to look for them, how to create those opportunities. And so working with an accountant is huge. Working with financial advisors that also do tax planning and tax advice is huge. And combining those disciplines is important. I think one of the problems, getting back to, why does reverse funding have trouble finding traction sometimes? I'm a mortgage guy with a passion for financial planning. And then you have mortgages here and financial planning here. But it's hard when you look at mortgages and real estate to not recognize that real estate and real estate related decisions affect your finances. So where reverse mortgage kind of fits is if you imagine a Venn diagram where financial planning and real estate come together, that spot where they overlap is where reverse mortgages exist, because now we're using your real estate and your equity here, and we're making it part of your financial plan here and bringing them all together. And you can only do that when you find a way to access the equity and make it liquid. And so working with those guys is really important, because even if I work with somebody who has no financial planner, I will often put them in touch with a financial planner, because you want to make sure that there is somebody who's going to be a good steward over their funds and how to manage them.
Okay. And I asked you earlier, what would be a good candidate for you? Who would not be a good candidate? Like, who is it that would come for you to help? And, it's not good to say, well, I had to turn them away, but this person just didn't fit for them to have your services.
Sometimes that's the easier question to answer. It's not a good fit. Really, I think first and foremost, the person who should stay away from reverse financing is the person who doesn't plan to stay in their house for more than a handful of years. Again, going back to the costs, the cost I think is justifiable, but it's not insignificant. And so if you're going to plan on leaving your home in 2 years, probably not the right product for you. And again, that's something that I go through with people, because I want to make sure that the product that we're choosing for them is a good fit for them long term. So I think first and foremost, who's not a great candidate? It's going to be that person who's not staying in the home very long. I've run into other unique scenarios where it just wasn't a good fit. One example that comes to mind is I recently had somebody who was selling a home, and they were netting about $140,000 in proceeds, and they wanted to buy a new home, and they were going to have to take out of their other assets an additional $140,000, which on the surface isn't necessarily a problem, but it would have left them with about $15,000 in cash. And so they were going to take all of their liquidity and put it down on the purchase of a new property that they would then finance with a reverse mortgage. So they would have no payments, but it was going to cost them almost all of their liquidity. And in the end, I just didn't think it was a good fit for them. To me, the idea and the beauty in the design of a reverse mortgage is that it takes this illiquid asset and makes it liquid, accessible, and usable. And in their case, they were doing the exact opposite. I just didn't think it was a good fit. So you do find those one-off scenarios as well.
Yeah, I love that in stages in people's lives, they might feel a little bit stuck. And there's always the possibilities to get unstuck, right? It's like you mentioned earlier when you jumped on and you said, the school system has failed us all, right? It's failed everyone on things that they can do and ways they can manage. And unfortunately, we don't have amazing people like you in every corner that we turn, right? So a lot of people do get lost. They lose their homes. And it was things that maybe could have been saved, right? But because of the lack of information that is out there, it's not happening for many people, right? So for me, I'm going to ask you, because I'm Latinx, so I do gear a lot for my Latin community. Do you have people that work alongside you that can help and work with the Spanish community?
Yes, I actually, and listen, sometimes you have to rely on family and friends, but I closed a loan just, I want to say maybe 10 or 12 days ago. And the client didn't speak any English, and I don't speak enough Spanish to help. But with the help of a family member, we were able to make that happen. And then we have people on the team that also are bilingual and can jump in and help out with things like that. And, you can't, I can't speak too highly of AI and Google Translate in these situations, because that is also helpful. Any communication I had with that client, a lot of times I'd rely on writing. I would just start off by saying, I know that this probably isn't perfect, but I translated this using Google or AI, and I hope it gets the message across. But yeah, we can most certainly help people that don't speak the language, and we'll do anything that we can to help in that regard, including getting counselors that speak their native language.
Okay, that's wonderful. I recently saw these little AirPods that you give it to somebody and it can translate. So that's mind blowing. I'm glad that that's happening, to help a lot of people in different, not only Spanish, but there's people that speak multiple languages here in the United States. And a lot of them might find themselves even in a worse situation, because definitely, if we're American speaking English and we're not getting a lot of this information, imagine other people from other countries as well. And they purchased homes here in the United States as well.
That's exactly right. And unfortunately, that barrier sometimes isn't just a language barrier, right? It also prevents them from getting access to good education and tools that could help them. So yeah, it's an opportunity, I think, when we can find ways of communicating with people that speak different languages, for sure.
Yeah. No, so definitely. So I'm going to really speak in Spanish real quick. So mi comunidad latina, si usted necesita saber más información sobre su casa, si tiene 65 años de edad y quiere saber cómo conseguir dinero y mantener su casa y no perderla, sí lo podemos conectar con Anthony Burns. Él es uno de los dueños del negocio, de cómo usar su hipoteca para protegerla. So me pueden contactar a mí y yo lo conecto con él, y así podemos traerle la información que necesita. So definitely, before we go and before anything, I know that you're like a trunk of information. I want you to give the message that you feel that everyone should know now, with our economy, with how things are going right now in the world. A lot of people are scared. A lot of people don't know what to do. Everyone is in different situations of fear right now. What is your advice to homeowners right now that are out there maybe trying to plan and not know which way to go? So I just want to give you this opportunity that you can give some information to the people that are out there that are homeowners, and right now, because a lot of stuff is insured in all communities, what is some advice that you can give?
First and foremost, I would probably say housing wealth is wealth, right? We treat it like the sacred cow sometimes, and we don't want to touch it or use it. Or I heard somebody say one time, well, if I use my equity, then I won't have it anymore. And well, of course, that's true of everything. If you spend your IRA, you won't have your IRA anymore. I'm yet to find the circumstance where you can spend the same dollar twice. But yeah, housing wealth is wealth. And, I think the best way to answer your question is to give you a little bit of an example that I work through with people sometimes. Imagine a scenario where you have two sisters, twins, we'll call them, both retired, 72 years old. They both have a net worth of $500,000. So, Jeannie, I'll ask you this. Are they wealthy?
They're okay.
They're okay, right? I mean, $500,000 it's better than the average
saving. Yes, 100%.
It's nothing to sneeze at. Now, let me get into the weeds a little bit on their situation. The first sister rents, and she's very comfortable. She gets Social Security every month, and she rents, and she makes it work. And her $500,000 is in an investment account, and it pays dividends. And if she wants to go golfing or visiting her grandchildren, eating, filling prescriptions, she has that available to her, and she could do whatever she wants. The other sister owns a home that's worth $500,000. She owns it free and clear. Their access to their wealth is really different, right? One of them can kind of do anything that she wants because her wealth is liquid. Mm-hmm. And the other sister is really limited in what they can accomplish because their wealth is not at all liquid. And so what we would do in that scenario is add a reverse line of credit for that second sister and give her the ability to access the wealth that she worked just as hard as her sister to accumulate. Mm-hmm. So they both worked really hard. They put this together. You have to have liquidity, I guess is the best way to say it. Liquidity is king. If you can't access your wealth, then it's not doing any good for you. And so I think that's a huge thing. Jeannie, in your line of work, right? Selling, you do a lot of life insurance. Mm-hmm. Life insurance mitigates the risk of dying early. A lot of the risk in retirement, it's going to sound crazy, is living too long, right? Outliving your money. So it's a huge fear that people have. They spend their entire working careers saving and saving and saving. They get to the top of that mountain, they plant the flag, they're all excited to retire. But the problem is visibility is really low up there. You can't see what the descent is like. You don't know how steep it is. You don't know where it ends. And you immediately start to take on this fear of, do I have enough to last? And so when you have people who have saved X amount in, let's say, a 401k or an IRA, and X amount in their equity, taking that equity and just making it part of the plan, making it part of a coordinated distribution strategy is paramount, and having all of your assets last longer.
That's wonderful. It's true. I love that scenario that you just used with the two sisters, because I think a lot of people don't see it that way, right? And it's true. The one was enjoying, she had her dividends, she had everything, so she's actually enjoying. A lot of parents here we see them, they buy the home for their children, and it's a forever home. And I think that we purchased our home, I want to say 4 years ago, but it was not with the intention of it being a forever home. Right. And I think that that's how people should go into a home, in my personal opinion, but people wanted to have, and then they're struggling within that home because it's not liquid, right? So they're struggling with it when there's ways that they can maybe, I say some things are for a moment in time and they fit their purpose, and sometimes you got to move on, right? And a lot of people don't know how to do that. They're stuck in a home that maybe they can't even afford, right? So it's just interesting, to put in perspective of someone that looks like she's renting a home, that she's not succeeding in life, but yet she had the liquid money to actually live, right? Because we only have one life, and she was living her life, right? So I always, that's a great way of you putting it.
And neither one of them did anything wrong. They both worked hard to amass the savings and a net worth that, that's admirable, honestly. Yeah. But we see this a lot. I mean, I'll give you another example. I had a client a few months ago. She owns her home free. Well, she and her husband own their home free and clear in California. It was worth $1.5 million. But they became citizens later in life. They didn't have qualifying quarters to get Social Security. And so retirement becomes a very cumbersome topic for them. Where do you get income in retirement unless you're working till the end? And so we structured a really nice size line of credit for them. They're taking a monthly stipend. They took cash up front to do a little bit of work around the house. It really kind of checked all the boxes for them. But midway through the process, she said, I'm having some second thoughts about this. And I said, well, all right, tell me what you're thinking. She said, well, we're just a little bit concerned that if we spend our equity, then we won't have it. And it's something that I hear all the time. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. If you were renting and that $1.5 million of wealth that you worked really hard to accumulate was in a savings account, would you hesitate to spend that money each month so that you could live a more comfortable retirement? She said, no, not at all. And I said, what's the difference? Right? The reverse mortgage has guarantees and safeguards in place that will keep people in their home for the rest of their lives. And then if a spouse predeceases another spouse, then the remaining spouse has protections to live there for the rest of their life too. And so if your fear isn't that you're not going to have a place to live, then what are we holding on to except for old ideas, right? Sometimes you talk to people and say, well, I want to leave the house to my kids. And then you start digging a little deeper and you find their kids are in their 40s. They already own their own homes. They have their own families. And then in the end, they don't want the house, right? If your goal is to leave legacy behind, I understand that. Leaving something behind for the kids, that feels like a real accomplishment in life. But if you leave them a $400,000 investment account and they transfer $400,000 in liquid funds to them, or if you leave them a $400,000 house or an $800,000 house with $400,000 in equity, it still gives them the same $400,000 of a legacy that you wanted to pass along. You don't need to pass along the doors and the windows. Ultimately, it's all going to get liquidated, and it's going to be a meaningful amount of money to your heirs. They're going to be so appreciative of the legacy you've left behind. How you pass it makes no difference to them.
Yes. That's 100% facts right there, right? I bought my house, was not for the intention to leave it to my kids. Like you said, my daughter has her home in Virginia, and they might not want to live where I live, right? So we're not going to force them on that. And unfortunately, a lot of parents don't think that way. But yes, I want to thank you, Anthony, for being here today. Please share with everyone how they can reach out to you and how they can get connected to get more information on anything that you spoke about today, or even just get started, because I'm sure it's crazy. I know so many people that can benefit from this service. And like I said, it's just the information is not out there. So I'm sure that this is going to get into the right hands of someone that is going to share it with someone that needs to hear this. So how can they get in touch with you? And you also said you do some financial advice, right? You collaborate with other people. So also, do you have anything in plan that's coming up that you would like to plug in here so that people can come out and see you as well?
So lots again to unpack there. First of all, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it, and I can speak on this topic forever because I really enjoy it and I'm super passionate about it. If people want to get a hold of me, they can go to my website. It's anthonyburnsteam.com. My last name is spelled Byrnes if you're listening and not looking. My email address is anthony.burns@ccm.com. And my phone number is 610-216-9813. You could reach out in any one of those ways, and I'm happy to chat with anybody. As far as upcoming events, we do have an upcoming event that we're doing for financial advisors. It's on February 11th from, oh boy, when is it from? I think it's from noon to 2 Eastern. If somebody is interested in joining, and I routinely invite prospects, family members, clients, whomever to this. So don't feel like just because it's set up for financial advisors that nobody else can go. But if anybody wants to reach out to me through my website, through my email address, or just call me, I'd be happy to send them a registration link and see them there. I think you're muted, Jeannie.
what happened here? Share that information with me, and once we repost the video, I'm more than happy to share that in the message as well, in the comments.
I'd be happy to. Yes.
Yeah, like that people can come out and get more information. And I like to connect in person, so I think it's great for people to go out and meet you in person, and they'll be able to share a little bit more of what their thoughts might be. But yeah, I want to thank you for being here today. It was wonderful. I do know how passionate you are, so it was definitely an honor to have you here today, sharing your wisdom, right? Because it is stuff you've mastered your skill, right? So who do we go to? The masters, so that can answer our questions. So once again, Anthony Burns, thank you so much for being here with us, with our listeners. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be sharing this forward like that. I'll share it with you as well, and you can share it forward. To everyone that's listening today, if there are any questions, once the video is posted, please feel free to either shoot me a message. You're going to have all of Anthony's information. You can share with any questions you have with him, or maybe even throw it on the comments below. Remember, this is on YouTube. It's going to be on YouTube, so the PA Empowerment Network. You'll find this video on there. We do ask you to please subscribe, because we're trying to go all across Pennsylvania, and we cannot do this on our own. We need your help. So please, I'm trying to bring the very best of the best from Pennsylvania to you. And in order for us to keep doing that, we need you to subscribe, all right? So that we can get further out into Pennsylvania. Because guess what? If we need this information here, people need this information out there as well. And remember, financial stability does matter. It brings us peace of mind, and it helps us plan for the future. So for clarity and just to be able to sleep in peace at times, right? It's good to be connected with the right people. And that's what we have here. So Anthony Burns was definitely the right person for reverse mortgage. And I'm so thankful for him for being here. Once again, this is Jeannie. I thank all of you for tuning in. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. It is Jeannie Ruiz. I'm the founder of Latin Nexus. I'm your financial coach. And I will be seeing you on Wednesday here on the PA Empowerment Network. So love you guys. Be safe out there. If you need help shuffling, ask a neighbor. Okay. So love you guys. Bye. Have a good one.